Back in 2009, I strapped on my first scuba tank when I was on leave from work in Zanzibar, Tanzania. And it opened up a whole new world for me beneath the surface. I've dove in calm waters, and I've dove in very sketchy waters, and I've had many encounters, some of them not so pleasant, most of them wonderful. But today I am going to be letting go of my scuba gear that I've been carrying around to multiple continents after more than 15 years of diving, and I'm finally going to be letting it go. But I'm not going to let it go without sharing a little bit of my memory and my experience with scuba diving. So I thought scuba diving was a big part of my life since 2008. I was working in Kenya and in humanitarian work, of course. I was back and forth between South Sudan, illegally actually going into the country of South Sudan in those days with the UN flights. Every quarter, every 3-4 months, I would get annual leave or leave to go take a break. And the biggest break that I had, the closest break that most people took for going to either, when they lived in Kenya, was to either go to Mombasa or Zanzibar or something. So my break was often going to Zanzibar. So I remember the first time I went to Zanzibar in 2008, and I'm up in the northern part in Nungwi, and it just started to downpour. I was just almost on a stroll. I was alone, and I was just on a stroll on a very beautiful beach, very quiet, and just out of nowhere, it just started to downpour. And I ran into a hut that was open, obviously public, and I'm just sitting there. I'm looking around, going, "What the heck is this?" I just see these black suits hanging on the wall, and a few pictures. Back 2008. If you've ever been to Zanzibar, it's very behind the times. At least back then. I don't know what it is now, but it was very cultural. Just a neat place to be. Authentic seafood every day, and as I'm sitting there, I still didn't grasp what this hut was about. And I see these guys walking in from the ocean carrying tanks, fully decked out in wetsuits, and carrying their tanks and their fins and their masks. And it's just like, if you've ever seen that movie Monsters, I think it's called Monsters, the cartoon, it was pretty game changing as far as cartoons are concerned. When they look at these guys and the big famous or the well-known monsters coming in, like looking at these guys with awe. Wow, that looks so cool. And I realized this was Scuba Center. This is where they were, getting ready and to suit up and walk out just to the beach and dive offshore. So I inquired there and about scuba diving, and the next day, I did panic about it because I was a swimmer. I know how to swim, and I grew up swimming, but something about going underwater just made me panic. And I don't know if it was some traumatic experience that I've forgotten about when I was a kid that's kind of carrying over, or a residual from a memory. I don't remember. I think there is something there. I don't remember. But I'm like, I don't want to not do this because I'm afraid. I want to do this. This looks really interesting. So right then and there, I said, can I try it? And they said, yeah, we have some intro courses. We can walk you right off the beach and just get you used to breathing underwater. So that set me down a path that I never expected to be on in over a 15-year period. So I went from scuba diving randomly a couple times a year, every chance I could get. So 3-4 times a year I would go scuba diving in Zanzibar a couple times a day. It was very recreational. You know, you're limited. I got the certification with PADI, open water, you know, and that's basically, you can do the basics. You can enjoy the water. And so most of my scuba diving was in Zanzibar. And then I did a scuba diving trip. I took a trip to Egypt with a friend, and we went to the Hurghada on the beach, and we dove the Red Sea. The Red Sea was probably one of the most spectacular dive sites I've ever been on. And the regret is I was a beginner. So I would go down and I'd be consuming my air very quickly, and then I'd end up having to share the master diver's tank because the other diver was getting pissed off. They were obviously a very good diver, and they were getting pissed off because I was running out of air and just spoiling the dive. As soon as someone's out of air, you need to go up. So over time, my skills developed, and I was very intentional about it. And I started going for all the, probably 2-3 years later, I started going for the certifications. I went for the advanced. The same friend that I went to Egypt. We flew down to Mozambique and then drove up the coast and stayed on this coastal village. And it was famous for diving, and there I earned my advanced diver and my nitrox certification. And so the advanced diver allowed me to go deeper, up to 40 meters, I think it is. And the nitrox just allowed me an alternative to breathing in oxygen. I mean, there's limitations to it, but I earned 2 more certifications there. And then I just really got into it. That's all I could think about while I was working. I would be always planning my next dive trip. And then finally, in 2013, I started after I was working in South Sudan, very rural. The first trip I made back to the States, I decided I'm going to buy my own gear because I want to pursue being a dive master. But I decided to buy my own gear, and I went with my mom, and we went to the local shop in Pennsylvania, and I was shocked that we even had scuba diving shops in Pennsylvania. And they said, and I was like, where on earth do you go scuba diving here in Pennsylvania? They were like, to the quarries. I'm like, really? Is that interesting? They like, yeah, they have students all year round, and they go around. You need more than a 3 millimeter wetsuit for sure. Yeah, they did. It's a pretty it's more common than I expected it to be. So they dive in quarries, and I'm like, I looked at some of the pictures. I'm like, that doesn't look very interesting. Enough for me to want to take and then the cost is much more than it would be for you to dive in the beach. So I bought all my gear. I wanted to support a local shop, and I bought all my gear. I bought American where I could. They made in USA where I could. The Ziegel, the Sunto, and I dropped $3,500 right there on everything right there in the shop. And because I was going back to Kenya to work, and then South Sudan, so I took this stuff back to South Sudan, and a whole big bag. That was one of my bags, and the other bag was just clothes I needed to wear in the office, which didn't amount to much anyway, because it was South Sudan. And so I arranged with the dive shop that I had been diving with for many years. I knew the owner, and really good guys, became friends with him over the years. And I asked them if I could come spend 6 months to a year there learning to be a dive master. And they are like, yeah, but you need the certification to be a rescue diver. That's it, rescue certification, rescue diver first. So I did that. That was fantastic, really fantastic. So he agreed to this, and I planned. I had enough money. I didn't need much to do this dive. To live there. I was going to live in one of the rooms of one of the guys that owned was a co-owner of this dive shop. And, just wake up living on the beach. I mean, it was very primitive, trust me. It was nothing, it was just exciting, and I didn't need much. It was a tiny room I had, and wake up, walk up to the shop, and then I would work at the shop. I would also help with different things around the shop. I did all the grunt work, moving stuff, tanks and weights and cleaning suits and all of that. Running the generator because they didn't have electricity at times. Right, filling the tanks with air. It was just fantastic. And so back to the rescue diver certification. One of the skills you have to do is you need to exchange full suit underwater with another person. You need to exchange your entire everything. You need to take it off while you're under and then exchange it with them without coming up for air, without losing your. And this guy that I was doing it with, he was an Israeli guy, and he was hysterical. He had the dreads and everything, and really funny. He was half my size, but I had no other option to have to wear his gear, and so the hardest part was like trying to get on the BCD, trying to put my arms through his BCD. He was wearing a small, I'm wearing a large. And then the fins, his feet were several inches smaller than mine. Everything was smaller. But we did it, and we had a really great time doing it. We kicked up a lot of sand because we didn't, you don't do that too far off the coast because it could be pretty dangerous out in the middle of the ocean. And then I had one of the activities I had to do for the rescue diver. I had to pick him up, dead man pickup, whatever you call that. He's laying full out on the beach. And carry him like 100 yards to the dive shop. So I just picked him up like a rag and threw him over my shoulder and through the beach, carried him up to the shop. And then he had to do the same with me. And I was twice his weight. I was thinner than I am now, even. I was probably about 15 kilos thinner than I am now. But he managed to get me up after many, many tries and then carry me up. He was just spry, lean but spry. I think he was former military. I think all the Israelis need to do military for a period of time, but just really fantastic experience. And then we both did the dive master course. Unfortunately, so my plan with the dive master was to use that as a plan B, maybe in between jobs, because I was doing humanitarian work. I would renew a contract. I'd go to different countries throughout the years. Every 2-3 years, I'd switch a position, or not a position, but I'd switch an organization I'm working for, or switch country. But it usually was the same. You get your periodic leaves throughout the year, and so my plan was to eventually take time off 3-6 months out of every year, or between contracts, just to go somewhere and do dive master. Dive masters don't make money. They don't make money at all. You do it for the love of diving. And I would have had enough money to be able to live on that and just, live the dive master life. And it was just my dream. I was actually in my late 30s when I was doing this. And then I thought, at some point, maybe I'll stop working and then just go somewhere and just become a full-time dive master. So I was probably late 30s, 40s when I did that. It was about 30. No, actually, it was about 40 that when I did the dive master. So imagine that was my plan B. So I got my dive master, a lot of study. The thing that changed it all was when I ended up getting a job sooner than I expected. I expected to be in Zanzibar for at least 6 months. So this was 2012, 2013. I just left Sudan. I left my job there. I finished my contract. And then a job I had interviewed for, I didn't expect anybody to call me. I had interviewed before I left South Sudan in different places in Asia, and I ended up getting an email offering me a job in Laos. And it was just, I couldn't pass it up. You know, I was already in Zanzibar. I just earned my dive master. I was in Zanzibar for 4 months, and I just couldn't pass it up. My heart was broken to leave, but this opportunity to go work in Laos for this organization was just, it was a dream. I wanted exposure to Asia because I hadn't been working there in many years. I've never worked there. I've only been to Thailand once before that for some technical support for the organization I worked for there. But I couldn't pass it up, so I left. Still, diving was part of my dream. So every year I would dive. I would still go to Thailand. I went to Indonesia. I went to Australia to do liveaboards. So that's when I got exposure to doing liveaboards. That means when you're living on a boat for several days and all you do is dive. You wake up, you eat well. You mingle with the people, really fantastic people. I got close with the people that I met regularly on these dive trips. Some people from Malaysia, and the guy who organized these trips, I became friends with over the years. And he would just always have this small group of people he would always stay in touch with about upcoming trips. So every year I booked a nice dive trip. I had the money, and it wasn't cheap. And I did Indonesia, I did the Great Barrier Reef, I did Phi Phi Island, Similan Islands in Thailand, just all over. And then in 2018, when I left Laos to come to Bangkok, I signed up for what would be my last trip. I didn't know it at the time. It was a Maldives trip. And it was a 6 days, 5 days diving, 6 days trip, but 7 days in total with the flying. You need to get there, and then you need the ground time you can't fly for like 24 hours after you do your last dive. So it was 7 days total, 5 days of being on a boat and diving. And I was trying to back out of it because money became a little tighter for me. I was with my wife at the time, and we were living here, and my budget just really changed because I was paying now for 2 places in Laos and in Bangkok, and I just didn't have the extra income anymore. And I tried to get out of it, but he said, "Yeah, sorry, it's too late." But I'm so glad I didn't, because it was spectacular. Absolutely spectacular, and he told me it would be. Pristine water, pristine dives, just seeing things you never thought you'd see before. Just the food was just 5-star. The boat was 5-star. The crew were 5-star. The people I was with were 5-star, and that was 2019, and that ended up basically being my last dive. And then, because it was a couple months right before the Roni, the COVID hit. So that's basically where I ended my last dive. You know, after COVID, during COVID, or during that time when things were, 1 or 2 years after the worst part of it was over. I still had the bug to dive, and my wife and I, we went to Pattaya, of all places, and it was absolutely awful. It was absolutely awful. It was like greeny. It was like swimming through muck. Green, everything was green. The turtles were green. We saw one turtle, and it was like the dive master got so excited. Oh, he's pointing at the turtle. I'm like, wow, that was amazing. The green turtle just sitting there. It was a big turtle, but I'm like, this is really pathetic. And one of the guys that was leading us, he was there training to be a dive master. He was an older guy. I think he was in his 50s at the time. And I'm like, what is it like here? You know, are you enjoying diving this water every day? And he's like, yeah, it's okay. You know, it's cheap. I'm guessing he was there for other reasons. Pattaya is also known for other reasons, other things. So he was an older man, single, probably 50s or so. And this was his plan B. This was basically going to be his retirement. I don't know if he's still there. But, you know, that was actually my last dive. So that was 2022. So after all of this, I'm finally, you know, it's been 3 years since I made that dive and 6 years since I did Maldives. I'm calling it quits. This is part of my purge. You know, I've kept on my, the gear has been, my personal gear has been sitting underneath my bed, pushed underneath my bed here, just in case, for really 5 years now. And I don't have the bug anymore, and it's shocking when I think about how excited I was about diving when I first started. I'm shocked that I'm feeling this now. Just, I changed. I don't feel the urge or need to go scuba diving anymore. You know, and it was good for 12 years, you know, and I'm looking at all the gear and the money I spent. So I ended my scuba diving career. I had over 250 dives. I don't know what that comes to per year, but it's a lot. You know, you really rack up the dives when you do the liveaboards. You're doing 3-4 dives a day, which really racks them up. But 250 dives, I had spent tens of thousands of dollars on diving, and my gear, you know, always accumulating. You know, over the years I wanted the better camera and this and that, and fortunately I didn't go too crazy with the camera stuff. I did have the GoPro, and I was really tempted to always upgrade because I was jealous of these guys who had these really amazing cameras going underwater. I mean, one guy, he had to pay $300 just to have his extra camera gear, just to have a suitcase of camera gear, an extra $300. It was more than the flight itself. And but he had this huge octopus contraption. It was enormous. I mean, he got some good pictures, but I'm like, I'm not really a picture type person. You know, I took my pictures, you know, the other day I was just going through my Google photos, and I'm looking at all these pictures. I'm like, half of them are crap, and then the other half are okay, and there's probably only about like less than 5% of them that are reasonably decent enough to keep. And then when I'm even looking at those, I'm going, okay, that's a scorpion fish, that's a lionfish, that's a, you know, whatever, that's a stingray, that's a manta ray, and close encounter with the shark, and I'm like, all of these pictures, even though I took them, I'm like, you can find them easily on the internet. So it was just like, all of this filming and all this time I put into the camera stuff, you know, I always tried to be cautious about what I was. I wanted to be cognizant when I was diving. It wasn't just always focused on my camera. It was really enjoying the dive. But I'm like looking at all this and thinking about all that expense and that time that I put into these pictures. I spent more time just trying to upload the pictures, take good pictures, than really looking at them. Look at them. I didn't look at them. And this past, you know, I'm getting a notice on my Google Photos that my pictures are, I'm going over my storage allowance, and and so I went back through the years and looked at all these diving pictures, and I trashed probably 90% of them. I just went through mass trash. There's no point to keep them. And only a few that just stuck out that I would keep, that were exceptionally good. So anyway, this is just my part of my motive here also with getting rid of my gear is I'm on a minimalist. I watch I listen to a lot of minimalist videos and people, and just the process it takes for you to get through getting rid of stuff. You know, sometimes you keep things just because they're expensive, or you keep things because there's a memory attached to them. And you know, I'm aware of Mary Kondo. I think is the Japanese name of that lady who talks about getting rid of stuff. You know, and I'm like, this has been there for 5 years. It's sitting under my bed. The stuff is still in good shape. I'm just gonna get rid of it. I'm going back to Laos. It's a landlocked country. Right now I have no desire to ever scuba dive again. I'm not to say that I won't one day. I might one day. We're on a boat and I get inspired, but all of this gear I can rent. I can just rent very easily, and a lot cheaper than carrying my own gear around and then having to clean it, because there's a whole process with maintaining this stuff. You need to get the hoses and everything checked. You need to check the computer, and then you need to check the keep everything well clean, which I did. I took care of all my stuff. But for that chance that I might dive again and then have to carry that somewhere, pay for the luggage and the whole ordeal, if I ever have to scuba dive again, I'll just rent it. I'll rent something that's already ready, and someone else can deal with the problem of cleaning it and putting it away and maintaining it. It's just, I think it's just one of those, I'm in a period of my life where it's time to let it go. And, you know, part of Mary Kondo's method is to say, Arigato. I am selling this stuff. My gears that's sitting in my bag, I've spent over $5,000 on it easily over the years. But I would say it's still very good condition, and I've been checking online just to see what things are selling for. This gear, I could probably, if I sold it piece by piece, I could probably get well over $2,000 for it. Well over, if I took the time to do it. The problem is I'm leaving Bangkok in 3 months, and no one in Laos is going to be buying this stuff. I mean, this is the market right here. So what I'm doing is I put it on my wife's Facebook account, because I don't have Facebook. I don't want Facebook. I closed my account in Facebook back in 2018, 17, 18. When Facebook really started to change with the politics and the vitriol on it. I wanted nothing to do with it, and it was a time waster anyway, and it was a mind number, a mind killer. So I decided to put everything on, post everything on some of the websites around in Thailand, the diving websites, and I said the whole thing. I listed every item. I took it out to make sure it was in good shape. Some of it's a little worn, of course, but everything for 20,000 baht or $600 flat. If someone's smart, they would pick up this bag. They would take this bag. They could sell, you know, and there's shops here that do this. They sell secondhand stuff. All they need to do is pick this up. They could easily 2-3x this. Sell everything for more than $2,000. They're going to easily double the money. All you need is, you need just to have that market, and you need the time, and you need the time to do it. And I don't have the time to do it. And for me, it's like, I'm going to thank Arigato for scuba diving, Arigato for the scuba gear. It served me well. I had a great experience. But that era in my life is past, and I think this is just part of the maturity. My values, my interests have changed. You know, my wife would never stop me from going on another trip or anything, or she wouldn't cause me any problems about it. If I go somewhere now, I just want to go with her and be with her and do something she wants to do, or, you know, just be casual. Maybe I'll scuba dive and maybe we'll be on a trip and I'll do that, but she'll let me do that, and then she'll just sit on the boat. But I don't want to carry this stuff back to Laos and just have it sit there. It's going to rot. So at least I could get something for it. And just thank God, thank Arigato, the scuba gear, for the memories. And anyway, This probably this has gone on a little longer. I think it was important for me to express this because scuba diving was such a big part of my life for so long. It was an important hobby. It helped me overcome a fear. It was something I pursued. I studied. There was a lot of education behind it, a lot of experience. It exposed me to a lot of people, a lot of different places. Yeah, a fish in Florida kind of looks like the same as a fish in Australia or the Similan Islands or something. Yeah, that's true. One of my friends kind of made fun of me at one point. Well, it doesn't really change too much. I mean, there are some different experiences, but part of the experience of scuba diving is the camaraderie, the talking, meeting new people, the relaxing on a boat, the just getting out, and because when you get in the water, you just free your mind. You just forget everything. And this was during a time when I was, I'm country hopping from one disaster to another, work-wise and context-wise, dangerous. And this was a way for me to get away and just get out of the stress, get out of the tension, and relax and enjoy something in the present. Because you don't really, when you're underwater, when you're looking at these things, you're there. You can't be thinking about work because of this beautiful thing right in front of you. So there's a real blessing in it, and there's a real sense of I think it can cure depression. Because when you get into the ocean, you see how huge it is. You see this life underneath. It's just beautiful. You cannot believe it. Seeing life underneath the ocean, seeing these beautiful places, the beautiful coral. Some of it's dangerous. Yeah, you have to be careful. But it just takes you away. It makes you realize how small you are. And so there's there's a lot of philosophical connections I can make to that. And it just deepened my life. It deepened my experience and made me who I am today. And I really appreciate it. I would never look back on any of that as a waste. Some dives were really bad, like in Pattaya. But someone else, I heard someone say, well, a bad day diving is better than a bad day in the office, a good day in the office. And I'm like, have you been to Pattaya? Have you been there? I hate to say it. I hate to say it for the people there, but I'm just like, I would never do that again. Phuket, I would. If I'd go to Phuket again, I would probably do a day trip. But without the gear, without my own gear, I just rent. It's just not worth that extra hassle anymore. And my priority is my wife. And we're going to use the money. I'm going to put it toward the wedding. It will help pay for some of these costs I have. So as I wind down this reflection on my diving, as I share my thoughts on passing on my gear to someone else, I'm not closing the chapter on the ocean, because it's going to be a part of me. The diving gave me a sense of freedom, gave me great memories. It gave me exposure to something that I never would have thought to do before. I met some great people, and over the years, it helped me become who I am, become who I am, and more confidence in who I am. So I hope whoever takes this gear, I hope that they're blessed with it, and that it serves them and gives them also good memories. Thank you for joining me on this reflection of my scuba diving adventures. And do you scuba dive? If you've ever scuba dived, where do you go? Have you ever thought to scuba dive? Is there any fears you have about scuba diving? Let me know. Where have you been? I've been to more places than I've listed already, but this is probably getting a little too long already. All right, everybody, take care. Thanks for joining me at Choice Winding Down Chronicles. Take care, everybody. God bless, and take it slow.